In a filmmaking career that has spanned over 30 years, my next guest is the man responsible for such cinematic classics as The House of Usher, Wild Angels, The Monster from the Ocean Floor, The Attack of the Crab Monsters, Little Shop of Horrors, and hundreds of others. Please welcome Roger Corman.
What's up, Vault Dwellers? Dan here, and welcome to the ultimate guide to Roger Corman films. This is gonna take a while, in the best way possible, of course. Roger Corman, he directed and produced hundreds of films during one of the longest and most relentless careers in the history of Hollywood. Now, I've taken 85 of them, the 55 he's directed, and some of the ones he's produced, and some of the ones he's rescued at the last minute by flying to Berlin on a Friday, and I ranked every single one of them. We're gonna start with part 1, which I'm gonna call the deep cuts, films 85 through 71. And these are early westerns, some quickies shot in a week on leftover sets.
Step up the pace, Sergeant.
And basically, these are the films that even devoted Corman fans, they may not have even seen yet. This ranking is based entirely on my own experience watching these films. You might disagree with my rankings, and that's what the comments are for. All right, let's start at the very bottom.
Sam Arkoff and Jim Nicholson were starting a new company, American International, and they made me an offer for the Fast and the Furious to start their company with. They said, I want a 3-picture deal in which I'm guaranteed my money back. As soon as I finish one film, I go to the next one using the guarantee. And that essentially started me on a regular basis of making films.
We're starting at number 85 with Smokey Bites the Dust, back from 1981. And this is where Corman's beloved carsploitation era finally ran out of road. The plot, if we're being generous here, involves a teenage car thief named Roscoe who kidnaps the local sheriff's daughter on homecoming night, setting off a 90-minute chase involving multiple county sheriffs,
Now get out of here.
various rednecks, and at least one Arab oil sheik for reasons the film never adequately explains.
2 mint tea, 2 goat's eyes, and 1 camel burger.
Salami.
Salami?
Salami.
Salami!
What Corman actually did here, though, was just breathtaking in its audacity. He produced an entire new movie by cutting together crash footage from 4 of his earlier New World Picture releases: Eat My Dust, Grand Theft Auto, Moving Violation, and Thunder and Lightning. And he just stitched them together with barely enough original footage to pass as a coherent story.
Do you want to trade your dad's car for a pack of cigarettes?
10 packs, no filters.
Well, let's get her what she wants.
Director Charles B. Griffith, who wrote some of Corman's great films, including Little Shop of Horrors, he really couldn't do much with the material that was assembled from the cutting room floor by design. Smokey Bites the Dust sits at the very bottom of the list because it isn't really a film. Even Corman eventually admitted as much. The man had standards. Sort of. A Time for Killing from 1967 started as a Roger Corman project before he handed it to Phil Carlson. And you can feel the identity crisis in like every frame. This was set during the final days of the Civil War, and the film follows a Confederate officer played by George Hamilton who escapes a Union prison camp and takes a hostage.
Supplies, only what we need, Luther. It's war, ma'am. Crew, come over here. Look after the lady. We may just need her.
With Glenn Ford's Union captain in relentless pursuit.
You know anything about the man who was carrying this?
Yes. Captain Benton killed him.
On paper, that's a solid Western premise. But in practice, it's a film that can't decide whether it wants to be a lean revenge thriller or a sweeping war epic. and it ends up being neither. What makes this worth noting isn't the film itself, but what it represents. Corman's habit of clashing with studios over creative control and walking before anything got too complicated. He did this repeatedly in his career, and almost every time the film suffered for his absence. A Time for Killing is a pleasant enough curiosity, mostly though valuable as a footnote about a filmmaker who knew when he wasn't going to get what he needed.
You mean right here in church, Lonnie?
That's right, Luther, right here in church.
Well, what about them bluebellies?
They can wait! You've got me to...
The Wild Racers from 1968 sends a brash American racing driver named Jojo Quilico, yeah, alright, I know, to Europe to crash the Formula One circuit and just generally be insufferable about it.
Done it again.
This was directed by Daniel Haller, who was Corman's production designer on all the great Poe films before stepping up to the director's chair. This one uses actual European Grand Prix circuit as its backdrop, which is easily its strongest asset. The racing footage, it's real.
Money cool?
Why not, baby?
This was shot at actual venues in Monaco, Germany, and Belgium, and it has a pulse-raising authenticity that staged racing sequences, they can't buy, right? The drama surrounding it is considerably less impressive. Jojo, he's the kind of guy you'd cross the street to avoid at a party. And the film, it doesn't seem aware that this is a problem. Haller was a better production designer than a director, and the personal story, it just really never finds its footing. The Wild Racers, it's enjoyable as long as the cars are on screen, but mostly forgettable when they're not. If you're a motorsport obsessive who wants to see authentic 1968 Formula One footage embedded in a Corman quickie, well, this is exactly the film you've been looking for. Everyone else, you can probably skip this one.
Damn sure I'll be on that line, if you know what I mean. On the line, dead on and flat out.
Target Harry from 1969 is the film Roger Corman was so unhappy with that he refused to put his name on it. This was released under the pseudonym Henry Neal, and this Mediterranean set thriller stars Vic Morrow as a freelance pilot who gets tangled up in a manuscript theft scheme involving double-crossers, some femme fatales.
Well, who's supposed to worry me more, you or Rushy?
Well, you have a chance to judge for yourself this afternoon. There's somebody special he wants you to see.
And this was shot on actual locations across the south of France and Turkey. The premise, it actually wasn't the problem. It's actually a decent pulp setup, and Morrow, he's a compelling screen presence. The problem is the whole thing feels assembled by someone who had heard about movies but really hadn't seen many. Corman later suggested that the project was compromised beyond rescue by interference and budget constraints that left him unable to shoot the film he intended. The pseudonym tells you everything you probably need to know about this, right? This is Corman on work-for-hire autopilot, doing what he could with a script he didn't believe in and resources that weren't adequate for the task. Target Harry exists as the answer to a trivia question. Which Roger Corman film did Roger Corman pretend not to direct? Yeah, it was this one. And given the results, that's fair enough. Sade from 1969 is proof that ambition without discipline produces something just magnificently baffling. This was AIP's attempt at a prestige exploitation picture, a lavish biopic of the Marquise de Sade.
1,000 per annum.
5,000.
3,000 crowns.
Pounds.
Very well then. 3,000 pounds.
Shot at studios in Berlin with like a $6 million budget and a cast that included John Huston and Lily Palmer.
Outrageous. Are you mad?
Monsieur, your son has signed a binding contract.
What they got was a production catastrophe. The director, C. Enfield, suffered some kind of breakdown during filming and systematically marked script pages as shot when they hadn't been, leaving the production 3/4 of a film with no coherent ending. AIP called Corman. He flew into Berlin, spoke with Enfield, and then quietly shot the orgy sequences needed to fill the gaps. He was uncredited in this film because he was there as a favor. The result is a psychedelic, non-linear spectacle that simultaneously has too much ambition and really not enough coherence.
I have here a lettre de cachet from the king, empowering me to put the Marquis de Sade in prison forever and forever.
You know, it kind of feels like this fractured structure that feels less like a bold experimentation than what it actually is. It's a film assembled by people who couldn't quite agree on what they were making.
You cannot change, and your promises mean nothing. The devil owns you.
As a document of late 60s excess eating itself, though, this thing, it's actually completely fascinating.
If not compelled, then why must I do what desire dictates me to do?
One of my more favorite titles, She Gods of the Shark Reef from 1958. This exists because Roger Corman, he was going to Hawaii anyways. The story goes that he was there to shoot Naked Paradise and just decided the location was just too damn good to waste on one quickie film. So he cranked out a second movie using the same crew, the same sets, and I guess the same lunch orders. All right, so two brothers, one decent and one a criminal, they wash up on an island populated entirely by pearl diving women who worship a shark god and have no particular interest in being rescued. The shark is just kind of implied, but the pearl diving, very real, and the women, so beautiful. But the drama is thinner than the water they're diving in.
Mahia bring bad luck to everybody. Mahia makes gods angry. Mahia, go!
She Gods of Shark Reef is essentially an expensive postcard with a plot stapled to it. Corman was 32 years old, and he was in Hawaii making movies at a pace that would give any reasonable person a stress disorder. And at some point, he looked at the landscape and thought, I could just totally squeeze another film in here. That's the Corman way in its purest form. Not waste, not ambition, just the relentless, almost physical compulsion to make something out of wherever you happen to be standing. Ski Troop Attack from 1960 was shot in 6 days. Not 6 weeks, just 6 days. And Corman wore that as a badge of honor. A small unit of American soldiers in World War II, they must cross enemy lines through the Bavarian Alps, on skis, blow up a bridge, and then try not to freeze to death along the way. It's a workmanlike little war film. Low budget, low ambition, competently executed, and those three statements are about the most interesting thing I can probably say about the film. Well, the ski photography, it's the film's asset. Corman used real mountain locations, which gave the production a scope that no budget could have purchased otherwise. And the action sequences have a kinetic energy that compensates for the anonymous cast, and we'll say the functional script. Ski Troop Attack is the cinematic equivalency of a perfectly acceptable weeknight dinner. Nothing memorable, nothing wrong with it, gone from your mind by the following morning. What it demonstrates, for those keeping track, is Corman's absolute mastery of efficiency. The ability to put a watchable, technically coherent film on screen with almost nothing and almost no time. 63 minutes, 6 days, moving on. Apache Woman from 1955 is actually Roger Corman's second film as a director, and it was made the same year as his debut, and it already shows the qualities that would define his whole career.
You're quite a fireball, aren't you?
Lloyd Bridges plays a government agent sent to investigate frontier crimes that may or may not involve Apache raiders. And Anne Gwynn plays the half-Apache woman caught between two worlds, a character who is, by some margin, the most interesting person in the film.
The first time I saw you.
When I was going to stab you with a knife?
Uh-huh. You're very exciting when you get mad.
But I'm not mad now.
You're still very exciting.
Corman shoots her with a dignity that the script doesn't always earn, and her internal conflict gets more screen time and more respect that the genre typically allows.
Go into the house!
He's right. I'm an Apache. Please go.
I'm not gonna have him talking to you like that.
I had a foolish moment. Please go.
Apache Woman, it's not a good film, but it's a revealing one. You can already see the filmmaker who will go on to produce Caged Heat and The Arena. Someone interested in women as protagonists rather than decoration, even in the context of a cheap 1955 Western made for American International Pictures picture.
Now sit down. And I'm telling you, not asking you.
It's rough and fast and occasionally confused about its own premise. But as an early data point in one of cinema's great careers, it's worth marking. Corman was 29 years old and already pushing against the edges of what a B-Western was supposed to be. The Oklahoma Woman from 1956 does exactly what its title promises. You have a gunslinger with a past who tries to go straight in a small frontier town while complications arrive from multiple directions.
Look out!
Got that gun out quick, like a man who's done it before.
Richard Denning plays the reformed outlaw, and Peggy Castle plays the title character.
Didn't that tell you something?
Like what?
Like maybe we're no good for each other?
I can be very good for you, Steve.
Corman shoots the whole thing with this brisk efficiency of a man with a plane to catch. Standard B-Western stuff here, executed competently enough that it passes 70 minutes without embarrassing itself. So you know what's worth noting though? It's the casting. Castle's character isn't the helpless love interest here. She's the antagonist, the driving force, and the most compelling presence in like the whole film.
We've been polite long enough. Bring Dick Anderson to see me tomorrow.
And what if he don't want to come? You said no rough stuff.
He won't go running to the sheriff. Get him here any way you can.
Corman consistently gave women in these like early westerns more agency and moral complexity that the genre typically just didn't permit. And that instinct shows up even in the most throwaway entries. The Oklahoma Woman is a perfectly acceptable drive-in western and probably nothing more. But if you squint past the cheap sets and the tight schedule, you can already see the producer who would later give Jonathan Demme his first film and let a generation of female directors, Barbara Peeters, Stephanie Rothman, do things like no one else in Hollywood would let them do. Gunslinger from 1956 is the one where Corman put a woman in the marshal's badge and made her the fastest draw in town when the local marshal is shot dead by a criminal land operation. His wife, Rose, she straps on the gun belt and takes the job herself. Beverly Garland plays Rose with this fierce conviction that the $48,000 budget constantly underserves, and the result is a film that's just way more interesting as a concept than as a movie. Everything looks like it cost $48,000, and the California locations, they never quite convince you that they're the frontier. None of that changes the fact that in 1956, Roger Corman made a Western where the hero is a woman marshal who outdraws and outsmarts like every man in the territory. And nobody makes a big deal of it.
Don't bother going back to town. I want you out of the state tonight. What about our clothes? Now! If you ever come back to Oracle again, I'll kill all three of you.
She's not exceptional because she's a woman. She's exceptional because she's just better at the job. That's ahead of its time in a way that still feels startling like 7 decades later. Gunslinger, again, it's not a great film, but what it is, it's a small window into why Roger Corman's legacy is just way more complicated and more interesting than a lot of people give him credit for.
Oh, I'm positive it was.
Swamp Women from 1956 is exactly what it sounds like and makes absolutely no apologies for it. A female police detective goes undercover in a woman's prison, joins a gang of escaped convicts, and leads them into the Louisiana bayou to recover hidden diamonds while making sure they don't actually escape. There are alligators. There's some betrayal.
Give me a gun.
Why should I? I'll kill him for you if you want. Give me the knife.
It's just a little late. Give me your gun.
There is a great deal of wading through murky water in period-appropriate outfits, and at no point does anyone seem comfortable in this film.
Why don't you two stop griping and get to work?
Corman shot this on location in Louisiana with a cast of unknowns and a budget that ran out way before anyone could add production value. What he got instead was this authentic swamp atmosphere. The bayou looks real because it is real, and that muddy authenticity gives the film an edge that more polished productions, they certainly couldn't produce. Beverly Garland appears here because she was in essentially everything Corman made that year, and she's the best thing in the movie. Swamp Woman is pure exploitation cinema, fast and cheap and completely comfortable with what it is. Another not good film in any conventional sense, but it's a perfect example of exactly the kind of film it set out to be, which, in the Corman universe, kind of counts for something. Naked Paradise from 1957 was shot in Hawaii as the companion piece to the She-Gods of Shark Reef, and the two films were produced simultaneously during the same trip because Corman, he just simply wasn't the kind of person who traveled somewhere beautiful and made just a single movie. So a gang of criminals hide their stolen cash aboard a Hawaiian plantation boat, and the predictable complications happen. There's some gunfire.
That jackknife, Sonny. You ain't getting any place, or you're gonna find out 1 second too late. I didn't need any help.
You would have if you'd have killed him.
A few double crosses.
Knock him out.
A whole bunch of scenic locations, and follow on from there. Richard Denning returns from The Oklahoma Woman, this time playing a decent man caught between criminals and his own conscience.
And when a kid tries to kill himself, his parents are there to stop him and give him a spanking. You're too big for a spanking, so you'll just naturally keep on going till you finally knock yourself off one of these days.
Naked Paradise is the most watchable of the two Hawaiian quickies, partly because the plot holds together slightly better, and partly because Corman seems to be enjoying himself in this film. There's like this lightness to it, and the pacing is relaxed. The locations, I mean, they're gorgeous. and the film, it really never forgets that it's operating in paradise. You know what's interesting though in retrospect is imagining Corman on this Hawaiian shoot 70 minutes from completing 2 films for the price of 1. And then the sun just goes down over the water. And Naked Paradise, I mean, it isn't much, but it has this breezy self-confidence that's hard not to respond to. You can tell he was having fun, and you can feel it too. The Young Racers from 1963 took Corman and a skeleton crew to Europe to film on the actual Formula One Grand Prix circuit. And the result is this sleek, surprisingly polished motor racing drama, but it doesn't quite add up to the sum of its impressive parts. An American writer follows an egotistical British racing champion across the European season, trying to expose him in print until the story gets way more complicated than anyone planned. The racing footage, it's basically the film's achievement. Authentic pit lane access, real crowds, actual Formula One cars just going at full speed. And Corman captures it with this urgency that bigger budget productions, they just never seemed to quite manage. The personal drama surrounding the racing, it is less successful, and the script asks its lead actors to carry emotional weight that the story just hasn't earned. But what The Young Racers gave the world wasn't its own plot. It was an opportunity. Corman brought a young, eager, completely unknown filmmaker named Francis Ford Coppola along on the European shoot to direct additional unit footage. That experience led directly to Coppola getting his first feature, Dementia 13, produced by Corman that same year. The Young Racers matters more for what it launched than what it was. Carnival Rock from 1957 is Corman's attempt to cash in on the rock and roll craze making studios rich in the late 50s. And like most cynical attempts to cash in on a cultural moment, it's more interesting as evidence of the moment than as a movie. A nightclub owner, he's in debt, in love with the wrong woman, and losing his place to the gambling habit of his patrons. While the stage acts, including David Houston and Bob Luman, they deliver actual rock and roll performances that are by far the film's best scenes. Corman wrapped the musical performances in the thinnest possible narrative scaffolding, essentially daring the audience to fast forward to the next song. Susan Cabot, who would go on to star in the far more interesting Wasp Woman 2 years later, does what she can with the romantic storyline. But the film is essentially a concert film in denial. What actually redeems Carnival Rock, I mean, well, at least slightly, is that the music is really damn good. The performances, they're authentic, energetic, and preserve a very specific moment in American cultural history that was gone within a decade. As cinema, its tissue is super thin. As a time capsule of 1957 rock and roll on the edge of becoming something enormous, it's actually kind of wonderful. Munchies from 1987 is Corman doing what Corman always did. Finding the most successful film in America and making a cheaper version of it before the original sequels could even land.
Well, you ever watch TV?
Gremlins came out in 1984 and made an absolute fortune. Corman waited like 3 years, then hired Tina Hirsch who had literally edited Gremlins for Joe Dante and produced what might be the most unsubtle Gremlins cash-in ever committed to celluloid. The creatures drive a car called a Gremlin. The license plate reads, "Oh Gizmo." They were voiced in part by Frank Welker, who voiced Stripe in Gremlins. Corman was not hiding his intentions. Harvey Korman plays twin brothers, one good, one evil, and the Munchies themselves are these horny, beer-drinking alien creatures who multiply when chopped up and spend most of the screen time just causing chaos in a California desert town. It is completely terrible and completely earnest about being terrible. Here's the thing that always gets buried in the mockery. Corman gave Tina Hirsch her entire directorial debut here. The film is a shameless knockoff, although the opportunity behind it was real. That's part 1, 85 through 71. The foundations of one of the most extraordinary filmographies in Hollywood history. These aren't the great ones. They're the quick ones, the recycled ones, the films Corman made because he was somewhere with a crew and would have been wasteful not to shoot a film. And even in the worst of them, there's a relentlessness that most filmmakers just never achieve at their best. Part 2 is coming with more interesting failures and a few hidden gems. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. But before you go, why don't you check out these other countdowns on screen now. And keep it weird, folks.
You're the kind of girl they don't come up with too often anymore. The old-fashioned type. No matter how quick you hop into bed.